Know the past, shape the future. Welcome to the official podcast of the Air Force Historical Foundation. A quick programming note, we've divided this story into two parts, so make sure you subscribe now. On this episode, we're talking to Dr. Jan Davis, author, astronaut, and engineer. Her new book, Airborne: 2 Generations in Flight, happened after a chance encounter when she discovered her father's World War II POW journal. Her father, Ben Smotherman, was a B-17 pilot flying missions over Europe. But after 21 months, he was shot down July of 1943 in Holland and spent the rest of the war in Stalag Luft 3. Like so many others, he never talked about it. But thankfully, the one time he did, he shared his journal with his daughter, Jan. Jan's book not only tells her father's story, but it explores the connections between his experiences and her own as an astronaut on the space shuttle. Here now is the continuation of our conversation with Dr. Jan Davis.
As I said, I didn't know that much about his career, but as I delved into it, I realized that not only genetics, both our propensity to want to fly and be an engineer, and I'm not an artist like he was, but I have a creative bent that I think I got from him. This whole journey of discovery was interesting because initially I was just going to write a book about him and really publish his wartime log. That was my goal, was to publish these incredible paintings and stories and pictures and just write a little bit about that. And then as I delved into it, I realized how much his career and mine had in common. And we did talk about that some when he was alive, especially when I learned to fly. When I started taking flying lessons, which was before I became an astronaut, I became a pilot. He wrote a lot about flying and was giving me advice, and he even wrote down how they flew on instruments back in that day, and some of his training, that kind of thing. So, and the risk of, he was really adamant about taking responsibility for any passengers that I had flying with me and how important that was. And so that was great. But that's really all I had from him about flying and his career. So as I delved into it, I realized that, his training and my training as an astronaut and training to fly T-38 jets we had a lot in common. We both had to learn how to, handle parachutes and dinghy boats and risk and using oxygen and, those kinds of mechanical things, but also the whole camaraderie that we both experienced, the training we did as a team. He had 10 crew members on his B-17 and YB-40 airplanes, and I had a crew on my shuttle flights, and how that works, how you work as a team, how you learn each other's duties, and how you back each other up. And it was just really interesting to me how much we had in common, even though there were different careers separated by many years. There was a lot that we had in common.
We've talked a lot about Jan's father, but it's worth noting her mother's words had a great impact on both Jan and her father.
Of course, the common thread was my mother, who, when I was selected to be an astronaut, she said, "Put God first, then your country, and go for it." And I'm pretty sure she probably told him that same thing when she sent him off to combat. And so thinking about that, again, she didn't talk about it much either, but I know since she's such a supportive, positive person who was always encouraging to me, even though she was probably scared to death, she was that way to him as well. And so I wrote about that too, that common thread.
As Jan's astronaut training accelerated, her father's health declined. But fortunately, she was able to see him one last time.
One of the T-38 astronaut pilots and I flew over there to see him in the hospital. And so I came in the hospital with my flight suit on, and my Air Force pilot, who was an astronaut, also had his flight suit on, and my father was just so excited to see us in our flight suits, but also to talk with someone who was an Air Force pilot. And then, of course, he and I talked a lot about what was going on, getting ready for my mission, because I was going to fly in a few months. So he did see me, and talk with me in that scenario, and that was really neat to be able to see him see me as an astronaut and as a pilot myself.
I want to stay focused here for just a second, because I have to ask you, after all of these years as a scientist and as an engineer, what are you most proud about during this time as a space explorer? You were even, and I love this title, at one point at NASA, you were the Director of Human Exploration, which just sounds like something, right out of science fiction. But you've done this. I mean, this is on your resume. What are you most proud of?
Well, that's a good question. I would say just the short answer would be flying in space, but I think the longer answer is working hard, having a goal, having a dream, and not letting people deter me from that dream or that goal. Because, especially when I was going to college as a woman in engineering, a lot of people told me that that's not a field for women. And I was going to Georgia Tech, and people even said, well, that's a man's school, which it almost was at that time. But, I persevered. And when I was working on my doctorate, it was a struggle, and had some rocky roads. But again, just worked hard because I had that dream. I knew I had to get that degree to be an astronaut. And so I guess that's, and then all the training and work that it took to become an astronaut. So I guess that's the thing I'm most proud of, is that I worked hard to achieve this dream, overcame some obstacles, set my goal, and kept trying. I interviewed. I didn't get selected the first time, and I didn't get selected the next astronaut selection they had a year later. So it was the third time I applied when I was finally selected, and it would have been easy to give up and say, well, I guess I'm not going to try this again. But I just kept trying to do things I thought might help, and then finally made it, and it was worth all of that work. It's just a beautiful view of the Earth, and an incredible opportunity for me.
Talk to us about blastoff. What's that like? Riding that big rocket ship in the space shuttle all the way into the heavens. I mean, what's that like?
Yeah, the launch is a pretty dynamic experience, as you can imagine. But you're laying on your back, and it's like a big push with a whole lot of vibration, a lot of noise. So you're shaking and rattling and rolling, literally, as you're being pushed from behind, and you experience initially about 2 Gs, so twice your weight, pushing up your back. And then as you accelerate, you go up to 3 Gs. And so it's an experience. The solid rocket boosters are the most dynamic part of the launch, and they stay on for about 2 minutes. So the first 2 minutes are pretty exciting. And then the engines stay on for another. The boosters drop off the space shuttle, and then the engines stay on for another 6.5 minutes or so. And that's not quite as dynamic, but you're still, rattling and rolling and accelerating. And so about 8.5 minutes, and then you're in zero gravity. So it's a pretty wild ride. And they do try to prepare you for that. They had a centrifuge that simulated the launch G's, and what you can't train for is all the vibration and the noise and that kind of thing. So you do talk to people about it, but it's still pretty surprising when it happens.
Was there ever a moment on that first space mission? I mean, your father had just passed away,
Mm-hmm.
where you had a second to think, here I am, his daughter, and I'm leaving Earth's atmosphere. I mean, he was a B-17 pilot, undoubtedly, with hairy missions that he flew back then where he was worried. Was there ever a moment of introspection on that first flight where you thought about him and what that meant?
Absolutely. I mean, I was disappointed he wasn't able to see it from the Earth, and I was glad I was able to see him just before my mission. But the introspection part was that I believed he did see it, from wherever he was in heaven. He had a great view of the launch and me experiencing it. So I kind of felt that, that connection that he really was there, and he could see it and experience what I saw. And then flying around the Earth every hour and a half is one orbit. I was flying over areas where he flew, areas I had not been to. When he took his actually his YB-40 from Florida over to England, he had to fly the Northern Atlantic route. So he went to Greenland and Iceland and over to Scotland and then England. And so I flew over those places, and I knew he had been there, and East Anglia and England and Germany. So it was kind of interesting to fly over those pretty quickly and realize, that he had been there and what he did to get to fly in combat.
We need to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll finish our conversation with Dr. Jan Davis.
Hello, I'm Dick Daso, Executive Director of the Air Force Historical Foundation. We're thrilled to launch our official podcast and hope you're enjoying it. But there's so much more to explore and enjoy as a member of the Foundation. Our morning release, This Day in Air and Space History, is available on most social media platforms and your email. The Foundation newsletter, the Raider Chronicles, the Journal of the AFHF both document Foundation programs and take detailed looks at our service history. The Foundation's Fall Symposium and Museums Conference includes cutting-edge scholarship focusing on aviation and space history topics, and amazing examinations of air and space museum exhibits and curation. I'd like to personally invite you to visit our website at afhistory.org and spend some time examining our program's affiliations, publications, and archives. Once you do, I sincerely hope you'll join us. A basic digital membership is only $30 a year. As a nonprofit organization, AFHF depends on the support of our members, both in dues and donations. If you join before April 1st, you'll receive a copy of our 2023 Summer Special Journal, a full 164 pages focused on the 50-year anniversary of the U.S. exit from Vietnam. You can also watch the proceedings from the 2023 Vietnam Symposium by accessing our research page. Thanks for listening, and join us today. Until next time, know the past, shape the future.
Welcome back. Just a quick reminder, our conversation with Dr. Jan Davis has been divided into 2 episodes. So make sure you've subscribed to the podcast so you can go back and listen to the first one, and also never miss any future ones. Here now is Dr. Jan Davis. You told me a story, and I just love this story. This is, it's still the late 80s, but it's a time when the world was different, and you're getting on this airliner and a pilot says something to you. You're sitting there and you're reading an Air and Space magazine. What? Tell us the story, because it's a great story.
Well, I'm pretty closed mouth when it comes to telling people that I was an astronaut. It just, is something that makes people think of you differently when they hear that, and it's kind of a very lofty perspective, which I just rather them interact with me as a regular person and not get into that. So I don't usually tell people I'm an astronaut unless somebody is condescending or that kind of thing.
I mean, a pilot might have an ego. I'm just throwing that out there.
Some do, yeah. I mean, I'm a pilot, so.
Hang around long enough and I'll tell you, right? I mean, so this guy, he just completely steps in it.
Yeah, so I was on a commercial flight and I'd been upgraded to first class, and he was walking by me to get to the cockpit, and I was reading this very technical aviation magazine, and he asked me what a woman like me was reading a magazine like that for. And I said, because I'm a pilot. And he goes, well, what do you fly? And I said, space shuttles. He couldn't handle it. He just kept walking. And the flight attendant was loving it. But anyway, I can count on one hand the number of times I've done something like that.
Today you have 2 grown children. You're a grandmother to 4, and you are a mentor to many. Astra Femina is a program that you have started with several other folks that is truly STEM outreach for girls. And you've seen this change over the years, and it's something that you're a part of, and I know that you're proud of. When you sit down and you talk about this program with other people, how do these stories from the ongoing discoveries, we've talked about Hubble, but I mean, you were also involved with Chandra, which is sending these X-ray beams deeper into space than we ever have before. And there's still these ongoing discoveries. You're worried about your grandkids and your kids and making soccer games, but yet this contribution to humanity is still ongoing. How do these stories fit into all of that?
Well, as I said, when I was going into college and deciding a major and a place to go to school, there was a lot of negativity about, people's response to that, to me. And I was just stubborn enough to persevere and say, well, I am going to be an engineer. I am going to go to this school, even though it's for men. But not all girls or what young women have that perseverance to try it. They might just say, oh, well, okay, well, I guess I can't do that. And the other thing is, when I started working, I was one of the few women. And in college, I was the only woman in my class usually, and I just worked through that. But, young women and girls sometimes need role models to help them realize that it's possible. And I had a role model. When I was working in the oil industry was when they selected the first women who would be astronauts in the United States on the space shuttle. And they selected women who weren't military. I was not military. Women who were engineers and scientists and doctors. And then I realized that it was possible. So I know how important it is to see someone else doing what potentially you might want to do, another woman doing these things that you might not think are possible. So the nonprofit Astra Femina is really for paying it forward, because those of us who founded the organization, the nonprofit, realize how important it is to go out and talk with these girls, usually girls age 5th through 8th grade, because that's the age where girls either really like STEM or they decide they don't want to do it. And usually the reason they don't like it or think they can do it is because of external influences, because somebody told them they can't do it, or because they see that everything in the media or whatever, is male in that field. And So we go out and encourage girls to pursue these STEM careers and provide role models for them. And we have over 100 members who go around the country talking to girls about STEM.
And being able to do the work, I'm guessing, is part of it.
Yes, right, exactly. And what we do and how interesting and fun it is. I mean, some of the people we have as members have fascinating careers in science or medicine or aerospace, or they're astronauts. I mean, so great dynamic speakers who speak to these girls. And we've had tremendous feedback and quotes from the girls about, wow, I didn't think I could do that. Or I didn't really, know that this career existed or that this was a possibility for me. And that's exactly what we want to do, is to put the idea in these girls' heads that, yes, they can do that. And this is how you do it. And so it's been very rewarding. We've reached over 24,000 girls since we started in 2019.
And you said in the first episode, and I loved this because it really goes against a lot of the stereotypes that you see in the media and in the movies. But you said, when I showed up to NASA and they learned that I could do the work, that was all they needed. And I'm guessing that still holds true today. Is that what you're hearing and seeing? Is that, look, when you prove yourself as a valid member of the team, that's all that's needed. But that's also tough if you're not hearing that day in and day out. And I hear what you're saying about why this is important, but does that still ring true?
Well, I think it's a little bit different now because fortunately at NASA and other places in the STEM profession, we have more women in leadership roles and management roles that, it makes it easier for a woman who's graduated from engineering school or a science or technology to go to work at NASA and be accepted right away. I don't think they necessarily have to prove themselves as much because that's been done with other women before them. And these women not only prove themselves from a technical standpoint, but also a leadership and management standpoint, that these women can become, a NASA center director, or, we haven't had an administrator yet of NASA, but a deputy administrator has been a woman, and we have one now. So I think it's a lot different now with so many more women graduating in these fields, although it's still only about 20% women in these fields that they have been given the opportunity to have these leadership roles and these high visibility roles. And so I don't think it's as important, to prove yourself as a woman. I think probably any engineer, male or female, has to prove themselves to some extent when they go to work. But I think it's much more open and common for women to work in those technical fields.
Let's change gears here real quick as we wrap everything up and talk about Airborne, the book that you've written about your father's experiences and your own personal experiences. Your dad, who was such a pivotal figure, really, in your life, even though you were not in contact daily after just like so many families go through with divorce, and especially after the war that you talked about in the first episode. But your dad, Ben Smotherman, a B-17 pilot, a guy who showed up for the missions when there was, less than the chance of winning a coin toss, survivability of these things. I mean, this was a living hell that these folks flew through.
Right. Yes.
In the B-17. You've since been able to fly in an airplane much like the one that he flew in during the war, a B-17.
Yes.
And you've written about all of this and how the similarities between your own career and his came together. I just want to know what the takeaway is on this, what these lessons learned are. If there's one that just stands out in your own mind after writing this and spending so much time with it, what do we want to take away about this, Dr. Davis?
Yes, I did have the opportunity to fly in a B-17, which was emotional and exhilarating, both for me, to be in the same airplane or like the airplane that he flew. And I think one thing that really made an impact on me when I flew in that plane was the element of risk. And I think the takeaway would be the risk that he faced flying into combat was very high early in the war before they had the fighter escorts that could escort them into enemy territory. And they basically, once they got into enemy territory, they were sitting ducks, and the German fighters could shoot them down fairly easily. So there was that risk that he faced every time he climbed into an airplane to go into combat. And these young men did that every day. You know, I mean, they didn't. His flights were probably 3 or 4 days apart, but nevertheless, he knew, you know, that he could die, but he didn't think about it. He knew he had a mission. He was focused on the mission. They woke up early in the morning, like 3 a.m., and had breakfast and were briefed, and then they flew. And that was very similar to what I went through flying the space shuttle. We had the Challenger accident when I had my first flight in 1992. You know, of course, we knew the risk. And I think, you know, facing that risk, but knowing that you're committed to the mission and that you understand the risk, and he understood the risk, but that our mission and our commitment to completing that mission was more important to us than the risk. So it was worth the risk in order to accomplish the mission. We were both serving our country in different ways. I mean, I am not going to say that flying in combat is the same risk as me flying the space shuttle, but that element of risk we both had to deal with, and we both had to prepare for. We had to prepare our families for. And so I think that's the common thread. That's the takeaway, is that we understood the risk, we accepted the risk, we were committed to the mission, we were committing to serve our country, and so that was a compelling thread that went through the book, which is titled Airborne. The subtitle is 2 Generations in Flight. So a father and a daughter, each flying as a career and taking this risk.
I did want to ask you if there's anything that you're really excited about in the future. The space and what do you sit back and on your porch when you're drinking your coffee thinking about?
Well, I am excited about the future of space. I like the idea of, landing people on the moon again. And I'm excited about our young people. I mean, when I go out and speak to young people about my career and encourage them in their careers, I have a lot of hope and faith in these people because they are very innovative and very passionate about what they're doing, which I really like to see. And so I have a lot of faith in that and in what they're doing and in our space program and the innovations that we've had in the space program. It's not all government. We've had a lot of private industry have flights and missions. We've got one coming up this week. So that's exciting as well. So when I contemplate sitting on the porch drinking coffee or whatever, it's how thankful I am for the opportunities that I've had, the opportunities that our country has given me to fly in space, but also, to be educated and to have a wonderful life and full of challenges and opportunities. But nevertheless, in the end, I'm very thankful for what I've done and for the opportunities that I've been given and that I've taken. So I'm blessed. I have, in fact, my husband and I were talking about this the other day, how fortunate we are to be raised in families that believe in education and strong faith and hard work. And now that we're in retirement and enjoying, the fruits of our labor that we've worked so hard for, we're able to enjoy our life and our grandchildren. And I'm very positive about the future of space and this generation that will take us the next steps in our space program.
Dr. Jan Davis, thanks for spending some time today with us.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Be sure to purchase your copy of Airborne, 2 Generations in Flight from ballastbooks.com. And if you order directly from their website, Jan will be happy to personalize your copy. I'm Matt Jolly, and until next time, know the past, shape the future.